It's me again. Since I'm the only man that stands between you and the lunch break, I'll try to make this short. Well, Jonathan started very well with maths lecture, so let me give you a physics one. No, not really. But what I was thinking about is the classical problem from classical and quantum mechanics, also made popular by the TV series on Netflix. That's a free body problem, that it's impossible to write a standard equation that gives you exact movements of free bodies orbiting each other in space, which for me is kind of a fitting metaphor about how do we integrate the three major bodies of any digital enterprise, which is the ERP systems, you know, the CRM-like systems or business app platforms, and the mobile platforms. So, in classical enterprise IT, when I started, I had no gray hair back then, 20 years ago. There was always an ERP at the heart of every company. ERP is kind of a system that looks inside of your company. How do you manage your manufacturing plans? How do you manage your supply chain? How do you manage your finance, legal issues, human resources, and so on. Users of ERP systems are usually people who work inside the company and are looking into make your processes more efficient. Then, another major body is the CRM system. What it stands for? Customer relationship. Why? Because it's not enough to just have something manufactured. You have to get it to your customers. You have to sell it. You have to market it. And once you sell it, you have to service it, of course, because customers want uninterrupted service and good products. And on the fringes of it all, there is a mobility, because some of your salespeople or service people really have more intimate relationship with your clients because they have to go to the field to service stuff or sometimes sell the stuff. So that was all, all nice and dandy, but it evolved over time. So what happened over time is ERP is still big and strong, although it gets somehow shadowed by something that grows out of the CRM space. And we no longer just call it CRM, it's more like business apps platforms. So platforms where you have to build digital experience that bridges the gap between your company and customer. So it's no more just sales and marketing and service. You got various industry apps for NGO, for healthcare, and many, many other use cases. What is also important is that what changed since 20 years ago, and that's why my hair is gray, because everybody have a mobile phone now in their pocket, and they want to access their business from a mobile. So it's not just like some fringe body of a problem, it's everywhere, and you want to have mobility. And of course, Microsoft has an answer for this. In Microsoft world, you see a lot of familiar logos, and you will see them more and more to cover all of these major things. So first, ERPs, you know, the most used ones in Microsoft world is Business Central for smaller to medium enterprises, and Finance and Operations, which is for the bigger ones. I won't go into details because there's lunch out there, but definitely I know a lot of partners here in the auditorium who know the systems and work on them daily. For something that we called business application platform, I think the ideal weapon of choice is a power platform. What I want to say is there is a lot of tools that will help you digitize an enterprise and addresses all the concerns, from data collection to data processing to everyday office work to collaboration to build mobile apps, to do the data analysis. You have all of it there. For me, what is important is to make a distinction when we say about the Power Platform and a Dataverse, because Dataverse is basically a data management as a service platform. So it manages the storage of data, but also the structure of your data. It gives you the management, metadata, building flows, and so on. So Dataverse, it's at the heart of your business app platform because it stores your data and allows automations on it. So, the world is beautiful, right? Where is the problem? Because, you know, we have all of this, so we can build nice integrated experiences for our customer. Well, you may guess it. The problem is that you have three bodies with its own separate worlds. Although it's still governed and it looks like one, there are 3 databases. In ERP, it's usually something that runs on SQL Server or Azure SQL. Power Platform, it's Dataverse, again, with SQL somewhere lurking inside. And then mobile apps, it's usually some SQLite database. What happens is that nobody wants to have 3 systems anymore. Your business processes become more and more intervened. So you care about what is happening in ERP. At any moment in time, somebody out there in the field can be selling something from the price list that has just been changed in the CRM platform because your supply chain just got disrupted by, I don't know, some ship stuck in some channel somewhere. So definitely while somebody is actually selling things, its prices are already outdated. And no one wants to wait for some closing at the end of the month to reconcile things. You have to do it immediately, right? The problem is the system has to be synchronized over unreliable connections. What I mean by unreliable, not just the mobile networks, which of course are unreliable by definition, but also these systems are maybe in different data centers or maybe run in a different patching schedule, availability spikes. So you can't rely that at all times everything is connected. And that's very important because this brings you to the definition of our problem. So you have one very integrated business process that works on something that seems like a shared data, but these data are stored in separate systems, and they have to be synchronized over basically unreliable connections. So they have different data storages that might get unsynchronized over time. So it brings some challenges, right? This architecture is still there, and I don't like to call them problems. Challenges, that's a new speak for problems, and I like that more. So first thing, asynchronicity, of course. As I mentioned, if something is happening in the field, something is happening in your office, something is happening in your power plant. It's not synchronized in time. It can happen anytime. And that means there's also latency because it takes time for information to get replicated between systems. And what comes out from asynchronicity and latency? You know? The problem, conflicting changes. As I said, you already sold something with outdated price list. What you do? You just order an item that is no longer available. You have to reconcile it. So these things will always be there. And they are between the ERP and the CRM, and between the CRM and the mobile app. Another point is data ownership. I think Antti also mentioned this in the governance. What does it mean, these 2 things? First, and most important is, if you have different systems, you will most probably also have different teams working on these things. And these different teams have different objectives, different schedules. And you have to make sure that you have clearly defined who is responsible for which piece of the data, who is responsible for which part of the overall business process, and how do you govern it. I mean, Antti did a great job showing you that it's not just like that. It's Wild West most of the time, but it's very important when you really integrate a heterogeneous system. And one more thing about the mobile thing. You remember this picture? Yes, you've been lied to. It's not so easy. Because every mobile device is its own body, because it has its own database, and it has to be synced. So, in fact, it's the n-body problem. It's not that bad in reality, as you know, because most of the time you can say that your field technician work on their own piece of data. So I have my own work orders, you have your own customers, but it's not always the case. Sometimes we have sometimes we have service crews, so several people working on the same assignment. Sometimes we have multiple inspectors inspecting one building, and sometimes we are just servicing the same client and have to update their information. So it happens, and integration challenges can be solved. Why? I'm very sure because we are not the first one to really encounter these problems. Over time, industry found some integration patterns. So I'll just fly through them so that you know. First, that seems most obvious, and it's very rarely used, is the so-called real-time synchronous service calls. It's great. If I do change in one system, I'll just make sure it's always done in the other system. So I make my change here, and I'll wait for it. I wait for it. Yes, that's the problem. You usually wait for it until it's done in the other system. So it usually blocks your work. because you don't want to wait for all three systems to synchronize. So it's only being used when it's super important, because if you want to have real-time synchronization, it can be very expensive. So near real-time is most popular because you don't have to wait. You just say, OK, my system did a change, and let others know, and let them deal with it. It's called near real-time because its great feature is that it will become eventually consistent, and it can be really almost immediately consistent. It just depends on how much time or how much money do you want to invest into infrastructure so that it can happen. Most of the tools we'll be talking about use this kind of pattern. So then it's push, pull, or one-way sync. If you have a clear owner of data and you know that only one party of the process, one system governs it, it's great because you just push it and pull in it when you change it, and everybody else just adopts it. Bidirectional sync, if there is no clear owner, that's always a mess. The systems are really coupled, and they can modify themselves. So if you don't really know if your accounts are changed in ERP or CRM, and you have no process, so you let the system change the data, which is great, but problem is you have to reconcile the conflicts. But sometimes there is no other way. Batches were very popular back in my day. Again, no gray hair. Mainframes. I mean, you just scheduled time when you do synchronization. So in the evening, we are consistent. During the day, all bets are off. It's still very popular. In fact, most mobile apps work synchronized in a kind of a batch mode, so either on schedule or triggered. And last one, which is very often used but very rarely mentioned, is so-called client embedding, or mashups or portals. In fact, in mobile apps, this is a very popular thing. Do you remember you have your mobile app, and you have your offline data, and you have your beautiful dashboard from Power BI? That's client embedding, because Power BI has its own data source. It doesn't have to be synchronized with the data in your device, but still you see data from two systems, and it looks nice, right? So you can choose from all of these when you implement your integration. And on the Power Platform, or in the Microsoft world, you have already tools to do this. So first, that is available both for finance and operations and Business Central, is so-called dual write. There are differences, and we can discuss them later if you want, because it's not the same, but it might feel like it's synchronous, but it's not. It's near real time. And what it does, it duplicates your data, which is great because you have your data available in both systems whenever you want. You can run local changes, local validations, local rules, and so on. But duplication of a lot of data can cost a lot of money. And again, it's a near real time. Other approach, very popular, is so-called virtual entities, which is real time, but it's virtualized. You don't duplicate any data. It's basically a show where you show, OK, see, I have this ERP data in my system, but in fact, you don't. It's in the other system. And every time you do a call, the system is contacted. So again, it's all prone to downtimes. And, well, you can wait. But it's very good because then you have, at least logically, everything in one place. And the third point is business and data events. That's something that you just define in your ERP usually, and you say, OK, now this data changed, or this process has reached a certain stage, and then you just publish an event and let other system do it. Again, those system either pushes or pulls the data based on this. What you should really look into, and we have many partners here who already have them, are custom connectors on the marketplace. Don't reinvent the wheel if you don't have to. There are connectors that are actually not just simple connectors, but they also solve some of the common problems of integration, and you should look in the marketplace. And if all else fails, you have all things Azure at your disposal. So you can integrate systems writing your own Power Automate flows, even logic apps. You can use Grid, Enterprise Service Bus, Azure Functions, App Services, you name it. When it comes to integrating Dataverse and mobile apps, you basically have two options. First is Power Apps. Power Apps are great for what they do, and from my perspective, it's a good fit for I would call it a casual offline, when your data sets are limited, as you heard from Matej, hundreds, thousands of records, it's good, and you have a good connectivity. So the only problem with Power Apps that I have is that they either work or they don't. And you don't have much space between to tune it and to actually fit it to your use case. So try them. You can even use them with Resco Power Components or Power Solutions. But if they don't work, you need something stronger. And there's Resco Mobile Apps. They can do basically the same as a Power App, but they are really tuned to work in high performance with large data sets. We also really recognize that there is a free body problem. So not every integration is the same. Not every use case is the same. And you may have special needs for certain data. You want to schedule your synchronizations. You want to tune it up. You want to choose which fields you want to see. And then again, since we are recognizing the problems in the field, we have analytics, monitoring, and governance. So you want to see what is happening in the field, how synchronizations are going. You want to help your field workers to resolve conflicts when they are in the field. So this is where we are really focusing. So you have to use two options, and both are great. But this one is slightly better if your use case is slightly more complicated. So I'll leave you with a few tips and pitfalls when you do the integration. So first thing is, don't go into the integration without experienced partner or in-house expert. It really is a complicated thing, and you have to give it a thought. Then it's really important to understand that you are never just integrating data. It's not about copying table from one system to another. What it is about is integrate your business process so that it can be executed efficiently. Don't fall into trap choosing technology before you understand which parties are involved, what is the security, what is the business need behind. So it's not like we choose this technology and it solves everything. It won't. And the second very related trap that I see quite often is we'll find one pattern of integration and it will fit all other processes. So yes, we'll use service bus and logic apps for everything and it will be great. But maybe you just need this heavy artillery for one of your processes, and all the others are very simple, but you will make them unnecessarily complex. So don't do this. Very important thing in any distributed systems with n-body, failures, delays, inconsistencies are not exceptions. This is what happened in the real world. You always have a situation where some data are out of sync, they're out of date. So always think that they may be part of your business process and they have to be recognized. So sometimes let your user know that you just sold something which is outdated, so the order is not the same as something that was sold and validated by ERP. Maybe. So don't treat it like a problem, treat it like something that happens. And last but not least, don't forget that data volumes and complexity of your business will only grow. So what works for today can work tomorrow, can work next month, but doesn't have to work next year, especially if you collect large amounts of data. Because in a year, we see it with Resco questionnaires, you start with 100,000 questionnaires in a database, and next year you have 1 million, and next year you have 6 million. So think about this. Think in the future. Think about retention policies, think about a scale. So what to do? Then try to find the right data model for each process. Simplify it, denormalize, aggregate entities. Very important. Think about each process. Don't try to fall into the trap of having one solution to fit them all. Explicitly define the boundaries. So both, like Ahti said, there are organizational and technical boundaries, and you have to respect them. Ideally, you have data ownership. You have teams responsible for various parts of the integration. You should respect them and make them explicit. Sometimes it's good to find good metaphors for cross-boundary processing, which it means you remember good old bureaucracy, I mean, you have a form, you fill a form, and somebody takes this form and put it into database. So maybe sometimes on a mobile phone, when you are changing address of company, you are not really changing address of company. You are making a request for somebody who is responsible and will validate it, and then will put it into system. So don't just change account address. Maybe it's better for you to make a request to change the address and make it explicit that this change is only temporary there, but it's not validated. So very quickly, stay on top of what's new and what's happening in the platforms you are using, because both Microsoft and also Resco, we are learning from you, our customers and partners, and we're introducing new features to make it more simpler, and therefore stay on top of it. Learn. So I'll just leave you with 3 takeaways to make it more consistent. So the thing is complex. Integrations are always complex, so get the help of an expert, discuss it, and get somebody good on board. Second thing is Power Platform is the thing. It's the platform where you should do your business apps and where you should try to integrate the process and build value on. And the third one, when mobility is the key for the success of your business, that means if people in the field are the people who are making money for you, or more importantly, if people in the field can work, it costs you a lot of money, then you have to have a really reliable solution for mobility, and definitely consider Resco. So thank you very much. That's all for me.